Hello, I'm Mark and welcome to Little Known Stocks, the show where I try to prove that being boring and doing your research will make you money. Now today we're talking about Oatly, and if you don't know who Oatly are, they are a oat milk beverage company, so another food company. I like my vegan companies, I like my food companies. Before we get started on the analysis, if you do like this video, please give me a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. It really helps the channel out, and a subscribe would be great as well. So let's get into it. So for those who don't know, Oatly recently IPO'd, and they IPO'd at a price, well, an expected price of $17 per share. Right now it's sitting at $23 per share, so they're expecting a market cap of $10 billion. They're now at a market cap of $13.76 billion, so up 38%, let's say, which is a significant gain, particularly in the current market where IPOs have really been struggling. So before I get into the details of Oatly as a company, I wanted to address them versus Beyond Meat, because I've seen a huge number of videos and articles comparing them to Beyond Meat. And it's a fair justification because Beyond Meat is a similar sized company. If we look at their revenue, they're actually neck and neck, 417 million for Beyond Meat versus 421 for Oatly. Similar gross profit margins, although Oatly's slightly more profitable from a gross margin perspective, and they are both making big losses. So the EBITDA is around minus 15% for Beyond Meat and around minus 12% for Oatly. Both have significant growth, so they're growing at above 60-70% most years, and it is very variable, but certainly the plant-based food market is growing very rapidly. So these are both companies with big growth in their future. But interestingly, if we look at the market caps, given that they're very similar companies, Beyond Meat has certainly had growth in its market cap over the past couple of years, but it's sitting around $9 billion. If we look at Oatly in comparison at $13.5 billion and a price to sales ratio of 32 versus Beyond Meat at 22, let's say, certainly Oatly is definitely more steeply priced than Beyond Meat. And I think Beyond Meat had the advantage of being one of the very first plant-based companies to the market, whereas Oatly is coming in with all the expectation that it's going to triple, that it's going to quadruple in price, much like Beyond Meat did. But I think we've now got a more fair valuation of straight away at IPO launch, which is something that I think people need to realise, and this may not be the monster growth stock that Beyond Meat was. People have already caught onto the plant-based trend, and that's certainly reflected in the price. So when we look at it versus its competitors, we can see that there's massive room for growth if they continue to be growing in this industry and become a food giant. So if we look at the likes of Nestle, Kraft Heinz, Mondelez and PepsiCo, which I always like to do when I'm looking at these food companies, the market caps are somewhere in the region of 15 times, 25 times high. You know, there's big room for growth in the food industry, but they are significantly bigger. So if I look at Oatly as a manufacturing base, I think I could count maybe 3 factories in Europe. It's very difficult to tell, but maybe 3 in Europe. There's 1 in Singapore, there's a couple in America. Let's say there's 8 in total if I've missed a couple. Nestle, for example, has 13 factories just in the UK alone. So they're really small in terms of a manufacturing footprint at this point. But you know, their factories are very new. They've existed since 1994, but a lot of their factories have been set up in the past 3 or 4 years. So they'll be very efficient, big plants, and they'll be putting out a lot of product. But there still certainly is a long way to go before they become a food giant. What you can certainly see, so this is a bit blurry, I've had to zoom in quite a bit, but you can certainly see that they are growing very rapidly in terms of their production. 2019 to 2020, they were up about 85%, and subsequently they saw growth of around 85%, which is really massive. And they're using their money, they're investing in more production facilities. We can see in 2020, they're saying 9 production facilities planned through 2023. So they're expecting to continue that expansion and really investing a lot in growth and development, very rapid growth. Now, one thing that really is a concern for Oatly is competitors and new entrants to the market. So if I search for oat milk on Tesco's, if you're not familiar with Tesco's, it's the biggest retailer in the UK. I first is Alpro. So Alpro are another similar milk alternative brand. They make yogurts, they make many things. They don't just do oat milk like Oatly, they have almond, they have all sorts of soya milks, oat milk, etc. So they're very competitive in this space. Oatly features massively. They are definitely the brand leader at the moment in terms of oat drinks. But what I've noticed recently, we've got Linda McCartney here, which is a big brand in the UK. I've noticed that all of the major supermarkets have started to do their own brand oat milk. And this is a real issue. Oat milk, if you're competing against dairy milk, it's going to be commoditized. And I've got another brand here that isn't on the Tesco website, but I don't know what this brand is. I liked it. I always drink oat milk, but the problem is I always buy the cheapest one. I am a vegan for environmental reasons, but I feel like if I'm drinking oat milk versus cow milk, I'm doing enough. I'm doing my bit for the environment, and it's a commodity, so I'm going to buy the cheapest one on the shelf, which is very rarely Oatly. And people do love that brand. It has a lot of brand recognition, very strong brand, but if others are like me, they won't be buying Oatly much. But there are different types of consumers. The other thing is alternative milks. So we've got lots of almond milks. I'm sure if I search for soya milk here, there'd be a load that came up as well. And the Vegan Society actually have published trends on this, and they're looking at the overall global dairy alternatives market share. You can see soy and almond are projected to be the biggest, then rice, and then others, which oats would fall into, which is a very small part of the market. Personally, I think this is underestimated, but there are regions like America where oat milk isn't really going anywhere at the moment. Oatly are starting to break that market, but they're not there yet. You've got Asia where it's not so big either. So those are big opportunities, but there are also other competitors in this space. But what I do like about Oatly is that they are not just focusing on milk. They are a very diversified company. So if we talk about other products, they've got their milks. They've got a variety of milks. They've got chocolate flavored milk, for example. They've got porridge. They've got oat cream. They've got yogurt. They've got custard. They've got oat spread, which is like a soft cheese. They've got various ice creams, and I've tried most varieties. Oh, they've got cream as well. Yeah, I've tried most varieties of these products at some point, and they're actually all pretty good. I've got to say, the ice cream I don't think compares quite as well to some of the other alternative ice creams, but it's pretty good, and that's personal taste. And really, they are charging quite a premium for a lot of these products. So in the future, I potentially see a lot of their revenue coming from avenues other than milk, which is what they're best known for. Lastly, I worry about new entrants to the market. So this is just one example, but if you think about oat milk, it really hasn't been popular for that long. You had quite a few people with almond milk, certainly in the UK a few years ago. It seems the US is still almond milk dominated. But then you've got new fads and new trends, and oat milk is the current fad and trend. But what's not to say that something else isn't going to replace that in a year, 2 years? Might be longer, and oat milk might be the one that's here to stay, but often people talk about health benefits of other things, and you get new data come along and suddenly people shift their opinion again. So being concentrated on just oats, I think, is a bit of a danger. We can see here an example, Nestle to take on Oatly with pea milk brand. Who knows how that's going to do? Pea milk is basically a new entrant into the market. If it tastes good, if it's got health benefits, you may see a big chunk of the market share for Oatly disappear there. And I think this is going to happen many more times before the alternative milk scene is done. You've also now got Coca-Cola entering the space, so the big boys are on board. They're launching differently to Nestle, not an indirect competitor, but a direct competitor. So They're launching an oat drink. So this is really directly competing with Oatly. And if you think, are supermarkets going to list when Coke asks them to list? Probably yes, they are. So there's going to be a lot of competition in this space. Someone's going to get squeezed out. I think Oatly are one of the big boys, so they'll probably stick around, but the space is going to get squeezed so tightly, there will be some casualties here. But as I say, I think Oatly have a good plan to deal with this, and clearly they're diversifying their portfolio going forward. And we've got some potential examples of that I'm about to play you in a clip right now.
Yeah, I mean, what an amazing frozen item in the US, and I think it's the best performing item in terms of velocity.
Really?
Limited distribution due to supply. Yes. Haven't you tried it?
No.
You have to try it.
How many calories are in it? No. I do Halo Top because of the calorie intake. If you can get me lower calories, I'm all in.
Okay, we can have a debate later, offline or something like that.
Okay,
or next time I come here about that. Yeah. No, but hey, no, you're onto something here. And the thing is that, you know, just the portion of our innovation is centered around milk. So we have in Sweden and Finland, those are the two countries where the full range of products, anything from, you know, cooking cream to sour cream to spreads and yogurts and frozen and all that. That is something that we feel very excited about, to be able, with a new capacity, to bring across different countries. But we are about mirroring traditional dairy, make that shift easy and not make a niche of a niche products.
What does oat cheese taste like? Have you got oat cheese? How good is it?
You know, we have produced oat cheese. It tastes really good. But, you know, if you look at vegan cheese, a lot of it right now, at least, is based out of starch. We believe we can do that with enzymation. That will take a little bit longer, but I think the function and the flavor could be even better.
As well as diversifying, Oatly have a massive opportunity in terms of this IPO that they've just gone through. They've raised $1.4 billion, which is a substantial amount of money. They've just announced that they're building one of the world's largest plant-based dairy factories in the UK. They've got opportunities in China to expand and build more factories. And we know that they're planning to expand. So I'm just going to play you a short clip that tells us exactly what they plan to do with their money.
In 2019, Oatly opened a 20,000 square foot manufacturing facility in New Jersey and is opening another in Utah in the spring of 2020.
Use the proceeds is going to be to build out the production capacity, period. That's how we're going to use the money, and that's, you know, needed.
So an area where I believe Oatly do have a really big competitive advantage is their branding. So they're very, very strong on their brand. In particular, how they tie it to the environment. So if we look really closely at these bottles, these cartons, you can see that every carton has a declaration of the kilograms of CO2 that it's generated. And they're really strong on comparing that to milk. So you can see here 73% less emissions than milk. And they really do go into a lot of detail as to how that breaks down. And you can find all the information on their website. That's one of the great things. They're so transparent in terms of their sustainability. So if we look here, that you see a complete breakdown from farm to factory to packaging. They are actually slightly worse on packaging, which is interesting. Slightly better on transport, and they do have their own fleet, which is really interesting as well. And that's an area they're trying to cut their carbon emissions. And really, it does really go down to very, very low levels of detail. So they give you an exact breakdown of what they measure, you know, packaging, agriculture, transport. They go into exactly what transport's measured. So even transport of oats from field to mill, transport of rapeseed from field to factory. So they're really going into all the details to exactly what they're measuring on this. This is very lagging data. I couldn't find anything for 2020, for example, but they really are pulling out all the stops to make sure that they're completely transparent on their sustainability. And that will, if you're a person who's doing this for ethical and environmental reasons, drinking oat milk or alternative milks, that'll be something that people will really pay attention to.
You know, if you look at what we have done, being the first company that, you know, with the carbon label on all our products in Europe, being the first European company using a fleet of commercial trucks, you know, and this sustainability report, look at the research around agriculture, getting that more sustainable. So there are many things that we just should continue to do that we now can scale up.
I did initially think that maybe Oatly was just comparing themselves to cow milk because they were worse than other milks, but when you look at the environmental impacts from the BBC here, which is should be a pretty reputable source, the amount per 200 millilitres of drinks, clearly all other milks are significantly less impact in terms of emissions of carbon. Oat milk, quite far down the list, more than almond milk, but roughly comparable. Land use is very, very low as well. But water, you can see much, much better than almond milk, much, much better than rice milk, slightly worse than soy milk. But, you know, all these milks are way, 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 way better than dairy milk, which is really what people are driving towards. So perhaps some people will pay attention to the differences between the four milk groups, but I don't think it's going to have a massive impact unless you're focused on this water use figure. So let's talk total addressable market. Now when we think about that in Oatly, there are two potential avenues and other areas they could steal market share off of. First one being by far the biggest, which is existing dairy. Currently worth at $500 billion, projected to grow by a compound annual growth rate of 2.5% from 2020 to 2027. So, you know, slow growth in the dairy market. So massive opportunity to steal here. If we think about dairy alternatives, we've got only $13 billion in 2018. It's growing at 13.5%. They said, let's say it's at 15, let's say maybe even $20 billion in 2021. Big opportunity there. Maximum 3% of the global dairy market, or, you know, milk market. And then if you look at where oats sit, every source I can see pits soy as first and almond as second, including the Vegan Society that we looked at before. So really, rice is third. Other sources really don't even feature, and oat isn't even called out specifically in any resource I've seen. So although oat milk is growing, it is still a minority in the alternative dairy market. So if we look at 2018 data, and remember the Vegan Society data was also from 2018, we see that soy and almond are listed as the two biggest markets here, soy being the biggest in 2018. If we move forward to 2020 and 2021, that's really flipped, and actually oat milk is already in that time, and it wasn't even mentioned as an option here, it was part of the other category. It's already become the second biggest plant-based dairy product. So it's edged out soya. Almond is still the biggest, and I'll show you a clip now which shows that almond really still dominates the US market, which is the biggest market. So that's a major opportunity for Oatly. They can't get things out fast enough, and supply is really the critical piece in America. So that's going to play a big part, but they do plan to produce more factories, and with that extra supply will come extra sales, and I really see them growing very strongly and competing more with almond milk as time goes on.
Entering the space, we know that 40% of our growth is coming from new users who's never been in the space before, right? And if you look at the proposition of just make the best milk that is designed for humans and better for the planet, that's what we are, and those are the ones we're capturing here, and that is what we are driving.
But the question does remain, this is a very fickle market, and oats have come on massively in the past couple of years, but will they stay and be the number one? It does remain to be seen. If you look at just from one aspect, the health benefits are questionable for oats versus other alternatives. So if we think from a purely calorific perspective, almond milk wins hands down, 29 calories versus 130 calories per 240 millilitres. That's a big difference. If you're a person who's looking for the lowest calorie intake, you'll pick almond milk. Equally, if you're looking for low sugars, almond and hemp milk have no sugars versus 19 grams in oat milk, which is comparable to dairy. Soy milk is again half of what oat milk is. But there are some positives. You know, protein's quite good, calcium's pretty good, vitamin D's pretty good. So there's some benefits, some negatives, but overall it's definitely not the healthiest milk. But that's just one perspective. And really I think the big win for Oatly is the sustainability piece, and we'll come on to that now. So Oatly aren't just a milk brand that you can find in the supermarket, and actually a lot of their early relationships were built with coffee shops. The reason being that coffee shop baristas actually liked using the product because they could make patterns and shapes, and the creaminess and consistency of the oat milk really helped them produce blends. So I'll just show you a quick clip on that now.
Oat milk isn't a nutritional replacement for whole milk. It has the two things that matter to baristas: consistency and taste.
I can pour equally as complex as designs with oat milk as I can with whole milk. I can't pour complex stuff with soy milk or almond milk, just like the consistency of it is not close enough to whole milk.
What that's enabled Oatly to do is basically build really strong relationships and partnerships. And so they've basically got a business-to-business route to market as well as the retail route to market. And that's another area of great diversification. You can see they're now partnered with Starbucks, which is a really strong brand and really gives them an edge on their competition that don't have these sorts of relationships already. So that's all I've got time for. In summary, I think Oatly's a great company. I think they're producing a very wide range of products now, which will be very, very successful. But I just think there's going to be a lot of competition in this market going forward, with the big players entering really now very seriously. And I think Oatly will find it difficult to grow and become worth their $13.7 billion market cap over time. I'm sure they will get there, but at the moment I think that they're just too overvalued, and I expect to see the price pull back maybe over the next year or so, down to a more reasonable level, and then I may consider investing. But for now, it's just a little bit too rich, but very, very interested in this company. I'll be watching very, very closely going forward. So if you like the video, please give a like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And yeah, have a good day.